Hello and welcome back to Norty's Spooktacular Film Exaggeration Marathon. Well, we're in the 80s, and I don't think anything defined the 80s horror scene more than sequels. So, let's talk about the Amityville Horror. The story of Amityville Horror begins November 13th, 1974. 23-year-old Ronald Defeo Jr. killed his parents and his 4 siblings in their house at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York. A year later, a couple named George and Kathy Lutz moved into the house with their 3 children, and after living there for less than a month, they left the house claiming they had been attacked by paranormal occurrences. This story led to the 1977 book The Amityville Horror, written by Jay Anson, which claims to tell the story of the Lutz month-long stay in the house. Today, it's often regarded partially, if not completely fabricated, but the book's success led to a movie adaptation in 1979 directed by Cool Hand Luke director Stuart Rosenberg, and starring James Brolin as George Lutz and Margot Kidder as Kathy Lutz. The film was a huge financial hit, making over $86 million on a budget of a little less than $5 million, becoming the second highest grossing movie of the year. And it's a movie that's remembered 40 years later despite not getting very good reviews. As of today, it only has a 30% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 6.2 on IMDb. And, well, for good reason, it's not very good. I was actually surprised how little I cared for it. I mean, the score was good, it was well made and well directed, and the ending was kinda cool, but for the most part it just feels like the precursor to movies like Winchester, where they do nothing for most of it except a few small little supernatural things, and at the end, last act, they just throw everything at the wall. Well, despite the disappointing first film, it did get a sequel in 1982, Amityville 2, The Possession. This was kinda the opposite in my opinion. This said fuck all to a slow build, and within 20 minutes the family was trying to kill each other. But because of that, I actually enjoyed a lot of this movie. The acting may have been hit and miss, but the atmosphere was pretty good, the cinematography was creative, and it was pretty fun. Although I'm a little weirded out by how good the sexual chemistry between the characters Sonny and Patricia was. They're brother and sister. It does get a bit boring in the last act because, again, it's the exact opposite of the first film, but I still thought this was a little better than the low Rotten Tomatoes score would suggest. And then a year later, in 1983, a third film was released called Amityville 3D, directed by Richard Fleischer, who also did the films 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Fantastic Voyage, and Soylent Green. But this was the 80s, the same decade he did The Jazz Singer, Conan the Destroyer, and Red Sonja. The movie was originally released in 3D because it was the 80s, but despite that, it only barely broke even domestically and was considered a flop. And critics weren't nice to it either, as it stands at a 5% on Rotten Tomatoes. But I enjoyed the second movie, and that had a similar Rotten Tomatoes score. So let's see if Amityville 3 The Demon, because I don't have a 3D copy of this thing, was worse than the other two. It's not a very good sign when the writer won't use his real name. So after about 4 minutes of padding, we see 2 people come into the Amityville house to perform a seance to talk to their dead child. Oh shit, she's having a seizure! No, she's just telling them that their child is at peace as he tries to talk to them.
Mommy, I'm here.
Guys, that's not your kid, that's Madame Leota. She got tired of all the happy haunts at the Haunted Mansion and decided to come here. It looks like a Slimer fetus. Well, there is a reason for it looking so fake. This is actually all fake, as the 2 are con artists, and these 2 are actually reporters to disprove them. Alright, that was kind of funny. Anyway, these 2 are John Baxter, played by Tony Roberts, and Melanie, played by Candy Clark. The guy who owns the place comes over the next day as they show them all their tricks, and this happens. I guess that was our first action scene. The realtor is worried because due to the house's reputation, no one is willing to buy it, nor even the house next to it. Well, yeah, no one wants to stay somewhere people died, unless it's a Days Inn. So John decides to buy the house, and he is going through a divorce with his wife Nancy, played by Tess Harper.
Dad? I didn't know you were coming over.
Wait a minute, is that Becky from Full House? Holy shit, it is! This is Susan, played by Lori Loughlin, and her friend Lisa, played by Meg Ryan? Yeah, this was the second movie she was ever in. Man, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies really went downhill. This is getting boring, let's kill the realtor. He hears footsteps and thinking it's Baxter, goes upstairs. But in the attic we get a recycling of the fly scene from the first movie. It was done better there, and it wasn't even done great in that film. Dude, you just saw a guy die right in front of you. Have an emotion!
Melanie is freaked out by the picture showing the disfigured realtor and takes it to the lab to get tested.
Let me tell you, Melanie, almost every day of the week we get something in here, some situation or phenomenon that's just as strange as this. And in 97% of the cases, there turns out to be a perfectly logical explanation.
And the other 3%?
What I'm saying, madam, is that ghosts exist. So after a few more scenes of boring, Melanie comes over to John's place and just goes inside without him answering the door. She hears footsteps upstairs and can't get out because all the doors and windows are locked. This is very inappropriate music for this scene. Like, if you're trying to drum up a feeling of suspense, you failed. This sounds like shenanigans music.
Alright, that was perfect comedic timing. I mean, that was just funny.
We then see John get on an elevator. Riveting. Wait, so the haunted house followed him to work? I don't remember that happening in the other two movies, and if it can, then shouldn't the Lutz family still be screwed? Oh shit, it's the Tower of Terror. First Haunted Mansion, now Tower of Terror. Why is this reminding me so much of Disney attractions?
So if the spirit could control an elevator miles away, why doesn't it just bring his car to life and throw him off a cliff?
So Melanie goes into the basement because that's the smart thing to do in a house you have a strong feeling is haunted.
You know, I would complain about those gimmicky 3D things, but they've happened so rarely so far that I actually forget that this was originally in 3D.
Just move to the side. John comes home and sees Melanie on the floor, leading to one of the funniest over-the-top reactions I've seen in a long time.
No! No! Don't you touch me!
What's the matter with
Don't you stay away from me!
Melanie?
You stay away from me! No! No! No!
Melanie!
Seriously, dude, have an emotion. Your partner's just had a nervous breakdown. She tells him that his house is haunted, but he's still not convinced.
Supposing I asked you this. Why do you think whatever it was that happened in there only happened to you and didn't happen to me?
Go fuck yourself, I hope you die.
Seriously, even if you think she imagined it, she's clearly upset and scared.
Jesus Christ.
This movie seems to be made up of 5-minute scenes of boring and then some loud noise to wake you up. And you know, these kinds of scenes annoy me. The doctor's trying to give a rational explanation for the supernatural things happening, but we've already seen the house kill a man with flies and blow a load of air into a woman. We know the house is haunted. Oh, thank God Becky and Meg Ryan are here.
Did you know you could have sex with a ghost?
Yeah, I heard it from this guy named Ray. He got a blowjob from a ghost once.
You know, if this turns into the subway scene from Ghostbusters 2, it might just make up for all the boring shit that's happened so far.
We get a really confusing suspense scene with them hearing footsteps and someone coming down the stairs just to reveal it's John, which, yeah, what did you expect? John has a suspenseful scene where the water turns on by itself, but nothing really comes of it. Melanie sees a creepy face in one of her pictures, and then the house does what I suggested to do earlier and take control of her car, sending her into a truck with those pole things. She survives though, but you may want to be careful so you don't end up like Kat. Instead, she catches fire and that kills her. Seriously, how powerful is this fucking spirit that can do all these things from miles away? Becky, Meg Ryan, and their two guy friends decide to hold a seance at the house because they're fucking idiots, and we get the typical Ouija board shenanigans.
Why don't you just kill them all and call it a day?
They see a glass fly across the room by itself, and for some reason this doesn't send them flying for the hills. Fucking white people. Instead they go out on the lake, while Nancy shows up and looks around.
Alright, I'm up. Jesus.
Alright, I will say this part is actually pretty creepy. Becky comes back in without Meg Ryan and her friends, and she's all wet, not answering her mother's questions. But outside, John sees that her friends brought her lifeless body back after she fell out. It's actually pretty well done because I started out thinking the spirit had possessed her and killed her friends, but it's actually her spirit. Nancy sees the dead Becky and starts to go a bit crazy, and just as things are starting to get interesting, this happens.
Am I supposed to be scared or whimsied?
Oh, come on! So even though his daughter is dead and his wife is so in denial that she starts preparing herself for her daughter's return, John still can't muster up much emotion. In just the last couple of weeks, he's seen a man die in front of him, had his partner and his daughter die. Please have an emotion! Any emotion! So the doctor and his team of poltergeist rejects inspect the house and help Nancy and...
Oh my god. Okay, we got about 10 minutes left. Can something finally happen? I don't know why I found that so funny.
So the doctor says he can save Susan from the well, and then this happens.
Alright, at least I'm getting some laughs. It's the least this movie could do.
As the doctor is dragged to hell, the house starts going nuts, and I think it kills most of the crew. It's hard to tell, especially with such lame special effects. This movie went from 0 to 10 in 3 seconds. Hey spirits, we've seen you set a woman on fire from miles away. Do that to these guys.
Why did the house just kill itself?
So, because John wanted a cheaper place to live, his daughter, friend, and about a dozen other innocent people lost their lives, and it still seems like he has no emotion to the whole thing. You are useless!
In that it was boring as hell? Yeah.
This movie actually made me appreciate the first film more. Yeah, it was mostly dull, but at least it had some form of momentum to it. When it actually had scary moments, they got progressively more intense. This was just boring with random moments of scary stuff happening that had no rhyme or reason. The acting isn't very good, the characters are all stock and dull, the direction and effects are lame, and besides taking place in the house and a couple of small nods, it barely has anything to do with the Amityville Horror. And even if you watched it in 3D, it doesn't have that many gimmicks. There are a few scenes that rile up a bit of suspense, and the last 10 minutes get delightfully over the top, but other than those, this is boring that isn't even worth watching ironically. It's lame.
So next week we'll be heading to the 90s to check out a horror comedy that bombed big time at the box office. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.